All right, so welcome in. We're going to dive into, of course, the metaverse today, jump into a lot of things around Illuvium's new beta release in Overworld as well. We'll have a special guest for you guys. So we're going to break down a lot that I think you guys are going to love. If you are metaverse friendly, this might be the episode for you. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Metaverse Insider. Let's get into it today, and that is with Mr. Andrew Wall, none other than the alluvial, but in real life.
This
Great
is
to
me
have you.
in real life right here, man. Hey, thanks for having me on, Paul. I'm excited to talk about AR, VR, the metaverse, all these topics. Let's do it,
It's
buddy.
gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. And Andrew's been on our show a couple of times, so we've had a chance to kind of banter back and forth on different areas of where the industry is going. I want to get into it with you, Andrew, around the potential growth of where metaverse in general. Obviously, this show, Metaverse Insider, even though we cover NFTs, blockchain gaming, etc., the core is around Web3 and kind of the evolution of what's happening right now, because we're seeing a lot of potential around what MetaQuest has been doing, obviously through Meta, a lot of what we're seeing from the device side of things, as well as the potential from the brand applications that we've seen with .swoosh and others that are starting to move into this direction. And I want to bring up a tweet real quick. This is Adel, and he talks a little bit about, let me highlight this tweet so it can show it, his Web3 deal flow breakdown. And mainly what he's looking at is where is some of the growth of where technology is going. And metaverse in reality, based outside of, if you just think about the financial side of things, data analytics, financial tools, all that stuff, but you flip over into the growth sectors, wallets, NFT communities, metaverse, lightning, music, gaming, etc. Metaverse has really kind of actually started to show up on the pie chart here. And to me, that was the first sign of, okay, wait a minute. I felt like we were quite a ways away from really seeing metaverse become a thing.
Mm.
And it was going to take a lot of trials, a lot of stops and starts. And this started making me think that maybe there's something within reach here. When you think about just metaverse in general, and where the market is right now, especially because the market obviously in a lot of pain, do you feel like this is still a long-term project, or do you feel like we are in maybe the perfect building environment?
I mean, that's definitely a euphemism right there, the perfect building environment. When projects are down 70 to 90%, that's the spin everyone's giving, right? It's time to build.
Yes.
It's time to put your head down and build. The
Yeah.
metric that you just showed is interesting, but I think that what it shows is not that metaverse is here, but that metaverse will be here in the future. I think that small sliver of the pie there in terms of investment is representative of, let's say, a flyer, let's say that some investment firms and what have you are making. They know this metaverse thing, whatever it is, they probably don't even know what it is, will be happening in the future, maybe. So we're going to allocate a small, multi single digit percentage of our investment portfolio toward this new technology as a flyer, as maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. If you're starting to see that investment side creep in now, that means that maybe over the next 5 to 7 years, that money will start to pay off. Some of the innovations will land, and then we'll reach mass adoption after that. But seeing the
Yeah.
investment money go in now, to me, that's an indicator that we're further out than a lot of people think. A lot of people think it's here and it's about to bull market blow up and go into
Yeah.
infinity. I don't think so. I think this is an early market, primordial goo, early market indicator that you just showed. Follow the
Yeah.
money? Well, the money's just starting to come in, which means the results are further down the timeline.
Yeah, I think, well, remember too, this being, kind of from the early stage financial side of things, in what we've seen in the VC side, we know a lot of the VC dollars are drying up in the space, especially in Web3. Obviously, because of some of the, the meltdowns that we've seen from FTX, Alameda, you name your flavor, and all of the major VC firms that were essentially kind of really pushing into more money. I look at it from another side, and that is the fact that we've consensed, even though the VC side of things, when the VC money is coming in a trickle space, it always tells me that there's big money coming somewhere else that's not being tracked. And I typically look at what are the companies that are working on stuff like this behind the scenes. Meta, of course, got a tremendous amount of flack for the amount of money that they put into Metaverse and the expansion of MetaQuest 2. and MetaQuest in general. And I think when you look at what they've done just in 1 year, it will show a few things. And I know you have some opinions on MetaQuest rapid on their device, but we'll talk about rapid growth too. But the point being is that I think there's a lot of hidden money here that's not being tracked, and this is what I call black money, and it's typically what basically creates these markets coming out. And let me explain to you why I think this is huge. So, in the early stages of the launch and the development of mobile, we had kind of this positioning. We'll call them the Web 2 era. That was everything was going along. Nobody had problems. Everything, it was like, why do we need something else, right? And what happened was there was a lot of black money being built and really centered around recreating an experience in a completely new way. That was the iPhone. Now, Apple, of course, we didn't have Mark Gurman at the time, so we didn't get all those leaks. But the point is that Apple dropped that on the industry in a period of time. I think that Apple, Meta, maybe even Google to a certain extent, maybe Microsoft are all in the throes of black money just going into these holes of building this product out. You look at Nike and what they did with Dot Swoosh. I think that's another good example. You think Nike just pooped that out? No way. That was a strategic deployment that took months and months of movement, and I think they're gonna do something big with it. I want to jump to this tweet. After FTX disaster, traditional money are more active. NFT and Web3 get less funding, just like what I just talked about. Total raise about 378 million. And then you look at the Metaverse funding right here, raised by category and infrastructure, mostly gaming, NFT, Web3, security, data, so on. The point being is that we're seeing some slight movement. To me, this means nothing. What I'm
Yeah.
looking at into where the real money is being spent is in these black coffers that are inside these P&Ls that are rarely exposed, because if they expose too much of that, it of course shows the hand of what's happening. So I still believe we're going to be getting a surprise from Apple, and I think we're going to get a surprise from Google next year as well.
Is
Obviously,
it really
Meta,
going to be a
we kind
surprise
of
though, Paul? Is it really though? I mean, given the amount of chatter and leaks that are coming in from different sources around Apple's AR glasses, I feel like
yeah.
we have a fairly good idea of what's going to happen there.
I
As far
feel
as Google
well.
is concerned, they're playing the cards close to the chest. But
Yes.
I think it's clear that they are working on something, and we have some idea of what the product might be like, but it may be further out than we think. And when they
Yeah.
do launch these products, everybody always talks about the iPhone like it was this blockbuster product that changed the world instantly. The first iPhone did not change the world instantly. The
What are
first
you talking
iPhone's
about,
kind of
Andrew? You're crazy. That is the one device that reset human nature, human technology
I
forever.
I know it eventually did, but right when it
Eventually.
launched,
Uh,
right when it launched, it didn't have that many apps. It took a few generations till about iPhone 3 or iPhone 4 for
uh,
it to really take off and reach the complete mass adoption version of the
see,
iPhone narrative we
this
all
right
have in our
here,
head.
this right here, it just reminds me of those kinds of things, that because I was you know a huge tech involved in a huge tech community at that time when this launched, and when we were building, I was working with Microsoft. At that time when Steve pulled that rabbit out of the hat, the shit that we went through from a technology standpoint. I mean, the scrambling that it put Microsoft into was undeniably the most. We were worried that it was over for us in terms, and it was, because Windows Phone never made it off the mat. iPhone, of course, just demolished the race before it ever got started. That's what I'm concerned about, especially with Metaverse, because I am thinking that if Apple does come in and pull another rabbit out of the hat, they could come in and demolish the field pretty quickly. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. But if you look at, this is something that I think is relevant. I was looking at just the Reddit collectible avatar holders. Okay, look at this climb right here. I mean, this is unprecedented. This is literal. This isn't even a bell curve. This is just up and to the right. And this starts to really represent something, I think, in the space of where we're going to see more and more involvement of not only deployment, platforms like Reddit, but also companies and projects that are going to look at these as blueprints for how do we roll this out. So I'm just thinking, this is going to really open up some very interesting components in the future. What's your response to what's happening with the success of Reddit and what they've been able to do with their NFT integrations?
Right. So are avatars like the way to go here? Like, is that the thing that
Yeah,
everybody's going to take on? Are they going to use Reddit as an example for success? And the answer is yes. Here in phase one of folks jumping into Web3, yes, they are. And this is a great case study that shows everybody it's okay to jump into the water. We
right.
just saw Donald Trump launch his line of NFTs as well,
What a
following the same
joke.
thing. And here's, well, you can think it's a joke or not, but hey, if it sells, and he's the best of the best, he's better than Washington and Lincoln, okay,
Well,
according to his
it gets
speech.
back. Yeah, it gets back to that. Gets into a political. I mean, yeah, I look at that and I think strategic wise, this was Trump's opportunity to create something that could have been really politically moving for him, and instead he went the superhero route, which was the wrong route. I'm just thinking creatively, that was the wrong route. What he did was the right thing, but the way he did it is, in my opinion, what makes him Donald Trump. Now,
Yeah.
many
And
people,
that's what his followers want. That's why I mentioned the
sure,
Washington and Lincoln thing, is because that's how he rolled it out. That's his personality. So Reddit was successful with their NFT rollout because they rolled it out in an organic way that worked for their community. The art was created by their community, by artists that were already on Reddit, and it was rolled out in this kind of organic way where they didn't mention any NFT or crypto stuff. And the Reddit community took to it. Trump rolled out his NFTs. I did a caricature of it just now in the
yeah,
way that his followers want Trump to talk. They want him to say
exactly.
he's the best of the best. So here's what I think about
That's
avatars
true,
moving
that's true,
forward.
that's true.
It was the right move for Trump. So here's what I think about avatars. Phase one, yes. The reason why avatars are working right now is because this is digital real estate, if you will, that's available in Web 2 for NFTs right now. Every platform, game, Web 2 service has an avatar field that needs to be filled. And to date, there's been very little, if not zero, creativity or innovation with that aspect of social identity to this
Yeah,
point over the last 15 years with social media platforms, online gaming platforms, and what have you. So you have to
but
ask yourself, what's the next big thing? So the
well, you
other
know what it's
digital
gonna
real
be.
estate,
You know what it's
wh-
gonna
what do
be.
you
I
what do you
mean,
think it's going to be, Paul?
I think it's gonna be Instagram and Meta. I think they're the ones that will mainstream this. Reddit is still, we'll call it what it is. It's a cult community. It has, we'll call them. I'm a geek. I'm proud of it. I would be in a Reddit community, of course. But there's a lot of people that are on Instagram would never be in a Reddit community, so they're not mainstreamed. And I think that's going to be the key here is when Meta really plugs this to Instagram and we start to see that kind of innovation around it. I think that changes the game a bit, especially with the fact that we've seen Nike kind of already jumping into the space with what they've done with Artifact, which is phenomenal. I mean, that model of what they're trying to do is fantastic for the fashion industry. And it's going to be, I would say, within a year. I hope you guys are coming back to this show a year from now or even before and writing in the comments below going, Paul was right that this is going to transform fashion. The fashion industry is going to move in this direction in terms of where Web3 and Metaverse will go. Because I think we are ready. We just had the Ready Player Me guys on, and listening to what he had to say started to make me think. Really, we are very close to that point. It's still very early. I would agree with you, but I don't think it's very far away before we start to
Yeah.
see this integration.
I've seen this in my own professional life. I'm a guest lecturer at Parsons School of Design. It's one of the top fashion schools in New York.
Yep.
And they were asking me about, they brought me in as a guest lecturer regularly to talk about Metaverse and to help educate them on NFTs. They all
Yep.
understand that this is a key part of their strategy moving forward. They had a lot less questions to ask about TikTok, Instagram, YouTube strategies,
Sure.
and a lot more questions to ask about NFT technologies, which blockchains were viable, which
Exactly.
platforms is the attention on, because they know that's the future of the fashion industry. So you have to
Yep.
ask. So we both agree avatars will be mass adopted across everything, and it's by virtue of the fact that this real estate is available, if you will, on every platform for an avatar, and there's been almost no innovation. But if you look at what other real estate is available for innovation here for Web3 to break into, let's just break it down really quick.
Okay.
Voice, we've already seen a lot of innovation on voice. You've got voice changers, live closed captioning, AI generated script reads. There's already been innovation on voice, and so there
Yeah.
isn't as much room for Web3 to capitalize. Okay, face cams, cameras like we're using right now. We already see VTubers with animated 3D versions making
Yep.
themselves react in real time, background replacement, deep fakes, lots of innovation. We don't need Web3 for that necessarily.
Nope.
Images, AI art, generating any image you can imagine, already have innovation. We don't necessarily need Web3. Okay, then the last piece, text. I'm breaking down all of the components of social
Yep.
media and all the platforms that use text. We have AI, script writing, chat bots, spam bots, lots of innovation there. So, what real estate is left over for Web3 to innovate in? There's two parts. Part number one is live. So there has been
Yep.
little innovation in the past 15 years for live content, period. The only things
Yep.
that have been added have been engagement mechanics like live chat. And
Sure.
most innovation in the live space since I was a full time Twitch streamer 15 years ago is the
Yep.
monetary innovation where you can get donations, subscriptions, and contribute more easily to your favorite creators. So there's very little innovation on live. I think that's a wide open space that Web3 can innovate. And then the other side is gaming. I please don't take this as an insult, gaming industry, but there has been little innovation, we'll call it in
Yeah.
air quotes, over
Exactly.
the past 15 years in gaming, outside of improving graphics, fidelity, improving online systems and
Yep.
processes, and shifting the business model to free to play. So the reason why I bring that up as like a what's the macro opportunities in metaverse right now? Just like the last tech cycle we went through 10, 15 years ago, Paul,
Yep.
this time the innovation is going to be led by live and gaming. We saw an explosive growth in the creator space about
Yeah.
10, 12 years ago when gaming was already, we already had compelling game experiences and people were looking for more. And then we were able to layer Twitch on top of that with a live experience to make that gaming experience and watching people play games be a novel experience. And that drove innovation and that
Right.
drove the social media revolution, the gaming industry forward, and broke down a lot of the barriers between us interacting with each other on the internet. So I think with metaverse moving forward, avatars locked in, everybody's doing that. But there's not that much additional opportunity outside of live and gaming. So I think that's where we're going to see the explosive growth opportunities because of innovation. Everything else is just going to be an improvement on something that already exists.
Yeah, there are certain aspects of the way that technology evolves over, and I've seen the tech cycles come and go, very a variety of different elements that have evolved from one bubble to the next. And really is in a position I think right now that's no different. I would call this kind of Web 2.5, which is typically the last
Yeah.
leg of these these sector growth potentials. And it's usually in the last sector, there's not a lot of innovation. It usually means that you've run out of runway to really take something to the next level. So I think that's going to be the big factor there. Back to your point, I do agree. Live, I think, will be a big part of that. Social will most likely start to work its way in there because of live. I think just if you just think about what Twitter Spaces has been able to accomplish in a very short period of time, if Elon does the right thing with Twitter Spaces and he flips that over to a video product, he creates that some way in a Web3 connection. We tie that into a Web3 identity. Avatar starts flowing in. Now we have a different game. And those are the kind of leaps forward that I'm looking for. But I'm actually in the feeling that because I think there's so much dark money coming at this industry right now that people don't want to know, to know that they're working on this,
Mhm.
that might be a little bit closer than not. But I do agree with you. I think you're dead on in the two areas. Have you seen anything in the live space that, at least in the early stages, has been able to come in and say, "Hey, this is interesting. This is a potential opportunity here," or even if it's a nascent technology or a project? Have you seen anything that you like?
Yeah, as far as live is concerned, it's similar to what you're describing.
Yeah.
So there's hundreds of plug and play metaverse platforms out there where you can generate a live experience with other people, similar to VRChat and everything that folks are familiar with, and you can do varying levels of interaction with a varying number of people. So the lower fidelity, lower graphics experiences are able to support hundreds of people. I advise a few startups that are in this space. And then the higher fidelity graphics platforms can only really support 10 or less people right now.
Right.
So we've got significant hardware limitations that's creating this laughable scenario that we're in right now when we look at things like Horizon Worlds. So
Yep.
people laugh at the graphical fidelity of the Zuck's Horizon Worlds and how poor the avatars look and the graphics look. It's simply a scalability issue, especially when we're trying to put those experiences through a piece of hardware like this. And
Yeah.
so for me, I think we're still a few generations away from those concepts actually going mass market, because what people are saying that they want a high graphical fidelity experience that's at least as good as the rectangle experiences that we're having on our monitors and on our phones.
Right.
And right now, the experiences that you're getting in your headset and you're getting in these live VR experiences are about as good as 15 years ago in the rectangles that we're experiencing. So that needs to catch up. That is a hardware iteration and a hardware revolution that needs to occur. And we're probably 2 to 3 generations away from the hardware catching up
Mm.
to make those Twitter spaces and looking at 3D avatars compelling. People don't want to look at a crappy looking cartoon version of you, Paul. They don't. They want to be in a cool cyberpunk looking city or futuristic city or something that looks hyper realistic, that looks triple A
Yeah.
to them. Then they want to interact with you, Paul. We are
Yeah.
multiple hardware generations away from that. And because we're multiple hardware generations away from that experience, I think it's going to be tough to get the hundreds of millions in here. We're going to continue to see that adoption curve go up as people like us that are metaverse curious are willing to go in there and look at weird cartoon avatars
Right.
because we believe in the tech. But I'm sorry, my wife and my mom are not jumping in there until it looks great, sounds great, feels great, and it's only a
For
couple
sure.
$100 for the hardware.
For sure. That's the thing that I think we're barreling down an innovation layer that may be actually happening much faster. And the reason I was just looking at like this, because this I think this references to what you're talking about was the response issues that were some of the hardware. And of course, Sharp came back in saying VR headsets. This was their big deal for CES coming out.
Mhm.
Um, and this was essentially going to fix some of the problems that MetaQuest is dealing with. Again, we're dealing with tech, much like what we were dealing with in the early age of the advanced mobile phones and devices,
Yeah.
of getting to silicon that is going to be able to keep pace in which with what we need in terms of hardware.
Yeah.
Now, granted, getting away from hardware, if you look at just software applications and the way to kind of converge across that, I wanted to kind of showcase a little bit about what Cavrnus is doing. So you had Cavrnus. I'm going to play this video. I'll talk over this, so guys don't hit the audio. But this essentially was a presentation that they did, and I think it starts to change a little bit more around how we may see technology being utilized. Why not utilize tech like this? Even if you looked at something like this for Illuvium and started to look at accelerating what Cavrnus has done to be able to create these open world integrations and still be at the same time give yourself the ability to take those alluvials and all of what you guys have done in terms of IP and launch this into something that becomes all right, now it's interesting. So it's just a tool set. So it deals with
Yeah.
the scenario that we're talking about, which is software first. I think we're a lot closer on software because this stuff iterates so quickly. And then hardware, which I think is getting really close because of the amount of dark money that's being pushed in right now. And I still think that when Meta gets challenged by Apple, and they will, when that occurs, and that may occur within the next 12 months, when that occurs, I'm almost wondering if Meta right now is sandbagging a little bit because they've already released their plan for MetaQuest 3 in 2023. I'm just wondering if they're sandbagging a little bit, waiting for Apple to like come on out. I would be. That's the way I'd play this. It's too early, not enough adoption. When do you
Mm.
sandbag? When nobody's playing. You don't sandbag when you're up against the A team.
That's true. I wonder if they are sandbagging. So they were running really hot on all of their spend, and Zuck knew that he needed to show something amazing in his last
Yeah,
quarterly report to justify
sure.
all of the spending. And I watched every minute of all those presentations. God, my brain hurts afterwards. But I think they tried to pull out all the stops. They tried to spin everything in from a business standpoint to show how
Yeah.
many developers are on board, how much economic activity was on board, and push an economic narrative around Meta about how successful the product is from a commercial standpoint. Nobody believed it because at the end of the day, they just went ahead and looked at the bottom line of the publicly traded company to understand how much impact these headsets and this ecosystem is having on the bottom
Yeah.
line, and it's a near zero impact, sucking up $10 billion per year. So I
Yeah.
don't think he sandbagged there. I think that he showed every card that he has that's ready to go to market right now.
Right.
Obviously, he's got billions in research and development, and maybe some of those concepts will come to life in the future. But I think he showed all of his cards because he had to, because his reputation as a being a prudent CEO was on the line. He showed all his cards, he flipped him over, and it was like a seven deuce. The market did not like it. It was not a good hand.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think Zuck is hoping that some of the innovations he's already developed, that he's already been working on, end up turning up and end up maybe being one of those innovations that pushes the platform forward that Apple doesn't know about, but they're not ready
Yeah.
to go to market, maybe not even in the next generation. He's already revealed what's going to happen in the next generation of his headsets with Oculus Quest and what have you. And it's basically
Right.
going to be, hey, what you guys experienced here with the Pro, that stuff, but in the cheaper version. Guys, sound good? Face tracking, that's cool, right? Yeah, face tracking's cool. But at the end of the day, you need compelling experiences. You need incredible games to get people in these experiences and to want to use
Totally
them.
agree. Yeah.
I think that too many people overvalue social interactions as being a hook to get people to use new technology like this and to adopt. For example, you mentioned Cavrnus a minute ago. Look, there's hundreds of metaverse solutions out there. Some of them are high end, like Cavrnus, or not. But what you have to do is have a experience that pulls people in first, and then the social interaction in the hub and the metaverse happens
Mhm.
second. So take World of Warcraft as a fantastic example in the Web 2 revolution. People go into the social hubs in World of Warcraft to talk with each other and to interact with each other because World of Warcraft is an extremely compelling video game first. The video game came first. They were hooked by the video game. They were hooked by the engagements, the progression of that video game. Then they decided to have social interactions with each other on through that platform through things like hubs, chats, voice, guilds,
Right.
etc. That's the big mistake everybody's making when they're thinking about metaverse right now. They're doing all these tech demos, everybody's building a platform, and they're hoping that if we build it, then they'll come. What is the software experience that's going to get people on board? Nintendo Entertainment System ended up taking off way more so than previous generations of gaming consoles, just as an example, because it launched with Mario. Xbox took off because it launched with Halo. You need to have a
Yeah.
piece of flagship interactive software, a video game that is ultra compelling, is a flagship intellectual property to take your platform to market. Look at Google Stadia. What did it launch with? Nothing. Where is it? Zero. Look at
Yeah.
Amazon Luna. What did it launch with? Nothing. Where is it now? Zero. What is Meta's flagship video game? What is their flagship metaverse? If it's
Yeah. I think
Horizon
the key
Worlds, they're
here.
bankrupt, bro.
Yeah. 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 I think the key with Meta right now is that they have either one got a strategy to implicate or implement some sort of acquisition model, which I think is probably going to be the route to take. And I don't know who that might look like or what that might look like, but they've got to get a Web two game studio and really start to look at the ways that those things can be integrated. But I would counter on that when you think about Cavernous and just the solution that it really is being used with Vivi right now. Vivi
Mhm.
has been able to create a social community. It has been able to create this ramp. Now, granted, it's about collectibles. It's a little different style and shtick, but it has something that I think is very powerful, and that is it creates this not only community, but it starts to create communities that are growing based on bringing other people into those communities.
Sure.
And again, it's very approachable. It has all the tool sets of how there's some on VeVeverse right there, and we had Carruthers on talking about this not too long ago about where this might go. There's some interesting things with this, and I think they might be onto something. I'm looking for this. I just wonder why would Illuvium not partner with someone like Ready Player Me for avatars?
Okay, really quick,
That
let me
seems like
address
it.
the VV thing. Let me address the VV
Okay,
thing. So VV using Cavrnus and what have you, that makes sense. VV's got the most compelling and the largest kind of digital collectibles community out there
for
with
sure,
some of the
for
best
sure.
intellectual property in the world. They've got
Yep.
the top comic book properties. They've got Star Wars, and their community goes bananas for that. So they have compelling collectibles experience first, then they're layering the social bit on top after that. Check. All right. So I just want that's the only point. So VV furthers the point I was just making, and that community wants to join there. So as far as
Mhm.
something like Ready Player Me
Yep.
and Illuvium wanting to join or wanting to maybe take on a solution like that. So right now that doesn't fit to my knowledge with Illuvium strategy at the moment. So avatar strategy, obviously we have Illuvatars coming up, and you have a
Sure.
2D avatar that will be used across Illuvium games and experiences. Illuvium's three games we're launching with Illuvium Zero, Illuvium Arena, and Illuvium Overworld are traditional video games that are going to be played on rectangles on PC and obviously eventually on mobile, and they're going to be inside of rectangles. So we're doing a traditional avatar strategy to support, given that everything's on a rectangle right now, at least at launch. Now, if Illuvium launches a traditional, let's call it metaverse experience, this might
Right.
be an option. Something like Ready Player Me might be an option in the future once there's a platform that has adoption, maybe tens of millions of users. But something like Ready Player Me has a 90% chance that it's not going to work out and it's going to go out of business just like every other startup. So, in my opinion, adopting any of these kind of early platforms like this and technologies are maybe a cool gamble, but Illuvium is basically taking a AAA kind of traditional gaming experience, adding
Yep.
and layering on top of that Web3 decentralized principles and Web3 economy. And that's the layer, that's the level of innovation that we're taking right now. If we decide to jump all the way in and go full blown metaverse with this and try to dive into a space where no one has been successful with these
Yeah.
3D interactive social experiences, I feel like that's a risk that Illuvium has not decided to take on yet. Is that something that we may want to do in the future? Absolutely, it is. So, Kieran has talked in countless interviews about our esports strategy, something I'll be really involved
Exactly.
in probably
Yep.
leading for Illuvium. And we've discussed our tier 5 land, which has yet to be sold, and having a 3D metaverse experience to experience esports tournaments in Illuvium through the tier 5 land in 3D with everybody sort of in a esports style stadium. That is the type of experience we've discussed having, and that's the type of experience that we're open to because it takes something that already exists. Esports experiences right now are not that compelling to watch on the internet. I know as an esports broadcaster, I produced esports videos for the top companies, the ESL, Blizzard, Activision. It's all on a freaking rectangle. And that's not as compelling as being in a 3D space in real life with a video game. And
Without a
so,
doubt.
if Illuvium were to take, let's say, Illuvium Games, the arena, put it in the center of a 3D space, have 100,000 people in a tier 5 land stadium around watching in that 3D
AR,
space,
VR,
that would
right
take the
there.
experience in AR, VR, mixed reality, whatever it may be. I'm not making promises on exactly what the tech's going to be, but it would take the experience of watching esports on a rectangle and take it to a whole nother level. Do you remember what I mentioned a moment ago? Where the opportunities are in the metaverse, Paul? They're at the
Yep.
intersection of live and gaming.
That
The
would be
concept
great
I
because
just
I
gave
think
you is the
it,
intersection of
it
both of those things, and it
exactly,
gives you a
exactly.
new novel experience to have with a video game as opposed to just another freaking rectangle with fancy graphics.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we'll continue to see evolve. But the thing, back to your point, is that to me, that I think is the future of where we're going to see Web3 gaming going. I don't necessarily believe Web3 game is going to transplant Web2. It just needs to have that extra component in there, and it needs to have that utility aspect to it that obviously are NFT related, obviously are Web3 related, but more importantly is the experience that we just talked about. All right, so I want to take a break and thank our sponsor. That is Ocean Crawler Watches. If you guys don't know, I'm a big watch fan. I love to collect watches, and I actually own an Ocean Crawler, and it's one of those that when you look at the dive business, this is probably one of the iconic watches out there. Now they have a whole array of things. The ones I like are kind of interesting because you know me, I'm a Bitcoin guy, so I love to look at what I think is their Bitcoin watch, and that is their Ocean Caller Paladino, which is the Wavemaker V2. You can do pre-order on these right now. There's a really cool offer that they've given just to our audience, and that is a $150 discount. So all you have to do is use our link in the description of the video below or the podcast. If you're listening to this, you may not get a chance to see these beautiful watches, but use the link. It'll take you to their website. Just use the code Baron, and that will give you the discount code. So all you have to do is do that. You're in like Flint, and make sure and let them know we sent you. This is a report that got into the percentage of consumers, and this again is looking at a certain demographic who are familiar with and have positive feelings for immersive tech.
Hmm.
And I've continued to see these kinds of numbers surprise me in the aspect of people kind of starting to look at metaverse as a potential here. Because again, I really, 6 months ago, I was looking at this being a 10-year window. Then I started seeing these things roll out from Meta. I look at the technology from a software application. I think about the use case scenario, back to what we're talking about. And then you say, all right, well, is the audience there? And is the emerging audience there, Gen Z, which is really going to be the ones that do this? I think they are. I think it's just a matter if we can get the tool set there. The software I feel is very close. And I think we're close to the next revolution here that is really going to change a lot of what we're looking at. Here was another one right here on this. Yeah, so this one was percentage of consumers' immersive experience might be impactful and valuable right there during product and service selection. Huge. So again, this gets back into how the use case can be implemented into the metaverse. I think there it is during product and usage support, also high, and then during the actual consideration phase. So again, these kind of scenarios, granted, I don't know how much they put behind this research, but the point that they've put research behind this at all, and we may actually see something that's of value really starting to evolve here. I want to jump over to the the overworld. So I know you guys have a lot going on. First of all,
Hmm.
graphics amazing. I think you guys kind of hit it there. Again, I still argue the point of a game from a Web3, a blockchain game like Illuvium. It needs that additional pump, and I feel like whether that's mixed reality or some sort of integration of that has immersive tech, I feel like that is. I mean, you can either skate to where the puck was 5 minutes ago, or you can skate to the where the puck is going to be, 5 minutes from now. That's the difference between winning and losing. That's a
I
Gretzky
love that.
thing.
That's great. So there's a couple different concerns here. So should something like Illuvium Overworld be in a 3D immersive space in VR, AR, what have you?
Yeah.
Experiences like this need to be developed from the ground up to support those technologies and to be a truly compelling experience. If we look at the most successful VR game that's out right now, Beat
Yeah.
Saber is successful because it actually was designed for VR first before any other platform, and it's designed to take advantage of the rudimentary technology that's available through controller tech and being able to sense where the positioning of your arms are. And so the question that you just asked is, well, shouldn't Illuvium or let's say any other studio that's trying to create a AAA game take advantage of AR and VR tech? In my opinion, no, no, they should not right now. I'm sorry, we don't even have tens of millions of potential customers here. This space is so incredibly early. It just is. And people that buy
Yeah.
headsets, this data shows that they buy the headset and then they don't use it. And so, what you have to do if you're going to design an incredible VR, AR experience, it needs to be designed from the ground up to be that experience. The development studios that create those experiences for the first time, the first AAA metaverse experiences, the first AAA VR experiences, which don't exist yet, will have to take extra development time to figure out how to do that for the first time for everyone else. You're looking at 3, 5, 7 year development timelines to get products like that out. So, could Illuvium create such experiences in the future? You bet.
Yeah.
If that's the cutting edge of technology, absolutely. But right now, you're creating an experience for customers that don't exist on hardware that's not ready to be AAA yet. So for me, it doesn't make sense strategically.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I was looking at the rundown here because again, it goes back to what's happening right now. You've got MetaQuest coming out here with Population One. This is a big one that starts to play into it. right after that. We just showed some Among Us clip right there, one of the biggest games ever coming to MetaQuest. This is going to come in VR. All right, and then you got Biggie coming over here. I mean, he's jumping in with a full on. Let me highlight that out because this is something that I don't know that there's going to be anything, but the point is that artistic elements are starting to make their way in there as
Yeah,
well. Now, this is all good. These are all the kind of things that we want to see. You and I both want to see these kinds of integrations because it starts to stretch the boundaries of creativity and
absolutely.
also use case, because this gets back to your point, and that's going to be adoption. I'm still on the fence as to whether or not what that real market, the addressable market really is right now. I'm sure that there are guys out there and people out there in Meta's team, Apple's team, Google's team that, you know, these are geeks that are really tied into what is happening out there in the marketplace and where this might be going. A lot of it is probably being developed right now. I'm surprised that we haven't seen movement from Sony just with the amount of data they're collecting from Nintendo around this, because that to me is another area. You're collecting all this data of an emerging population, Gen Z, that is playing in a way and in a fashion in which they're looking for these new experiences. If somebody drops into these, especially with the amount of data that's being collected, I don't know. We might be into something very interesting. Here's some charts. VRChat. Look at that. Number 58. I was surprised that VRChat was in here. Top games.
Number
You know.
58 on what?
So
Just
this
top
is
games
on the
in terms
top
of
top
Steam?
games by current play. Yeah, on Steam charts. Yeah, and I was surprised that this was there. So not surprised. I shouldn't say that. I mean, in
Yeah,
reality,
I know
this is
the
what we're
answer
talking
why
about.
that's the
Okay,
case with
why
VR
is it
chat.
there?
It's
Why is
really
it there?
simple. So I used to do trend analysis and I'm a nerd like you. I did talks on this. So the question is like, why is VR chat a top game? And it's the same reason why just chatting is the number one game on Twitch. So basically, over the last 10 years, we saw the merger of live on top of gaming, and
Right.
that gave a new novel experience. However, midway through last decade, it stopped being so novel watching people play video games on the internet. It just kind of became normal. And then you got tens of millions of people doing it. And then people started getting bored. So, what does the user want? What does the viewer want? They need infinity content in order for
Yeah.
live streams to thrive. Okay, so great live streaming video games have three components that help them get towards tons of content, but not infinity content. The tons of content formula is have multiplayer, have modding, have PvP, and have regular updates. And if you have all of those things, you are Minecraft, you are Grand Theft Auto, you're the
Right.
games that have tons of content but not infinity content. But
Yeah.
Paul, let's do some quick math here. What's better than tons of content? Infinity content. And
Yeah.
so, how do you get infinity content? Social interactions with people. So,
Yeah.
just chatting. I made the call 5 years ago that on Twitch, the number one game on Twitch would be just chatting. It is
Just
now
chatting.
17% of Twitch, and it
Yeah.
will continue to take more and more market share. So, when we look at video games, what's going to happen there? Well, it's hard to make a video game that has modding and PvP and multiplayer
Yeah.
and all these things to keep people hooked. But if you create a social experience like VR chat, that's infinity content that you can play
Yep.
every day. And so
Yep.
that's the formula. That's why it's blowing up. And so I think social games, let's call it, will have a larger and larger place in the top charts in terms of gaming. But VR chat isn't just a chat. It's very gaming esque and it's very gamer
Yes,
friendly, and there are
for
gaming
sure.
aspects to it that make it a compelling experience that's funny and hilarious to watch people. And people gamify their interactions
Yeah,
with each other with
no
voice
doubt.
changers, and they turn it into this meta social game. So the point there is people what the next big thing or the biggest thing will always be what gets you closer to infinity content potential. Social interactions currently is the most infinity because
Yeah,
humans obviously are most interested in looking at each other's faces. Everybody out there is watching our faces right now, right?
yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I think we have come to a conclusion here is that we both have a lot of similarities and agreements around where this is all cycling into. I think for me, it just boils down to one thing. I think there's a lot more money at work than we know, and I think there's a lot more curiosity at work than we know. And this is kind of why, I look back and I mentioned it earlier to the, kind of the comparison of how Apple dropped the bomb when they dropped the iPhone. it just didn't come out of the blue. They had a lot of data that was starting to send them the signals that they needed. And I think that's when you look at just this VR chat. I was this right here playing an hour ago. So 24-hour peak, all-time high. You can see that it's all up and to the right, all the way back from 2018, and now here we are into these kind of scenarios. And I just think we're going to be looking at this in a year from now, whether Zuckerberg is pulling the best fake of all, or if Tim is pulling the best dark, release of something that we've ever seen, and it's going to create the next evolution of Apple because Apple's in trouble right now. We all know it. They're in trouble.
Yeah.
They're going to lose. They're going to lose the App Store monopoly. They're going to lose this control and stranglehold on the creator, and the device system is going to start to break down. That means Apple has to have another cash cow. Food for
So
thought.
do you think it's going to be
Anyway,
their AR? Do you think it's going to be their AR VR glasses then? So my anticipation, I want you to be on the record, Paul. What is your
on the record.
anticipation of what you think that product will be like? Personally, I think they're going to launch the Apple Watch on your
Uh-huh.
face. That's going to be
That's a good
generation
one.
one. It's going to be Apple
Yep.
Watch on your face. It's going to be elegant. It's going to be beautifully designed. It's going to be really, really good tech. It's going to be pricey, but it's going to be Apple Watch on your face. And then
Yep.
maybe 3 or 4 generations down the road, it will, just like the iPhone, it will go from being that initial concept to what iPhone 4 became, which is the juggernaut that dominated the world. So I
Yeah.
think
The
that we're going to
difference.
start really slim and trim and simple at first, and then they're going to be really counting on the development community to develop apps specifically for that hardware, and that's going
Well,
to
and it
propel
may.
it like the iPhone into infinity.
Yes. Yeah, it may that could be the track. I would agree. I think it's going to be that element in terms of some sort of mixed reality glass system, or device that could be something even beyond that. And I've had conversations with this many technologists from Silicon Valley talking about what this might end up looking like, meaning something as like an over the ear piece that has no facial element and has the ability to work within possibly doing whether it's holographic or some sort of integration into. We won't go there, but the integration maybe into our heads, which will be interesting because obviously we know where that's going. If you think about what Elon's doing, so it could change a lot of where now we're talking about being plugged in without being plugged in, kind of thing. So
I'm okay with that. Okay, so if Apple pulls out something like that, I was
game.
so wrong. Okay. And then that is an iPhone moment that blows away the industry. If they have
Yeah,
innovative technology that uh, isn't just a pair of glasses with an overlay, which is what the
yeah.
market is expecting.
I would hope that that is not the case, because that if that is the case, it may take us longer just because of the device elements. Now, granted, we could see, a flyer come out of the development community, especially in the Apple ecosystem, that creates, the next just barnstormer use case for that utility aspect wise, social integration, the Instagram, TikTok version, live streaming element that could change that very quickly and become an overnight sensation. That's a very good possibility. There's a lot there. Andrew, I know we could go on this for quite some time. It's been fun today. Always love chopping it up with you. Thank you so much for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Always pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Paul.
You bet. All right, so you guys are tuned in over. I know this went a little bit long, but you guys are over on the podcast side of things. You just missed a graphic bonanza. We got a chance to dive into Illuvium's new look on their beta. And if you guys are, interested, I would suggest, start reaching out, take a look, get into that ecosystem there on Illuvium, take a look at that. They're not sponsored of this show, just so everybody knows. We don't shill those kind of things. So the idea behind what we're doing here is hopefully educating you on where the future of technology is going. That's the main focus of what we want to do. One of the ways we do that is we ask you to join the Diamond Circle. And the Diamond Circle is a free and easy thing to do. All you got to do is just subscribe. We send you a couple emails. That way you can keep up with all of this stuff because it's traveling really at light speed right now. If you guys want to reach me, it is out there on Twitter at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on Metaverse Insider.